brought the fan up to me. This is tape 7912, side 1, a continuation from tape 7911, which I, Martha Blaine, am describing the funeral, the preparations, and the ceremonies attended at Garland Blaine's death. On the last tape, I was saying that a very unpleasant occurrence came at the very end of Garland's funeral ceremony. As I said, his daughter Effie insisted that his eagle feather fan be placed in the casket, and this had been done. As most of the people had filed past after most of the people had filed past the casket and had gone outside to wait, although there were still several people still sitting in the room from the family and others. This daughter went up to the open casket and started to take the eagle feather fan out of the casket. Her brother, who was sitting next to me, saw this, and I saw it, and the rest of the family. And he went up to her, got up out of his seat, and went up to the casket, up to the body, and proceeded to try to tell her to leave the fan in the casket. She refused to do this, and the struggle began with him trying to make her put it back in the casket. He finally literally carried her out of the room into a side room where you could hear them arguing. This was indeed a shocking thing to happen, and I realized at the time that it wasn't so much that she wanted her father to carry his fan with him, but that she had wanted it for herself. The casket was closed while this was going on, and the ushers came and carried it out to the waiting vehicle. When we were seated in the car, waiting to go, Jimmy came back out of the building and said that she would give me the fan at the burial. I was very angry with what she had managed to do, and was even more so when Mr. Poteet came into the car and told me that someone had come and had removed the guest book at the end of the ceremony and carried it off. I presumed it was a young girl, and I presumed it was one of Maggie's daughters, or perhaps Effie herself, who had managed to do that, so that I would have no record of who had attended the funeral. At the gravesite, there was another short Masonic prayer and a reading of a scroll, the usual scroll, which was dropped into the grave. Reverend Pratt offered a prayer, and I can't remember much of what happened because I was so shaken by the events in the funeral home. And then I literally was shaking all over all during the proceedings, not from the temperature, but from the reaction to the meanness of this girl. Then I believe there was another, yes, Elvin and a group of a few people sang another, maybe two, I'm not sure, Indian songs. And the announcement was made that a funeral feast would be held at the women's building after the funeral. People filed by to shake hands with mourners who were sitting in rows on the west, or no dear, I don't know which side of the grave, side toward the main road. I know that Jimmy Blaine, the son, Garland, was sitting on my left, my right, and I think Aunt Viola was sitting on my left, but I'm not sure. Among the mourners in the church, in the funeral parlor, were the families of Maggie Blaine and the Cowies, Rosanna Turnbull, who'd come all the way from San Diego, Alice Taylor, wife of Elmer, and Virginia Blaine and her children. She was married to both Victor and Jimmy Blaine. And others that I had, Hattie Tonema, who, there were others there, but I don't know who they were because they were sitting in the rows behind me. After we left at the very end of the ceremony, after people were still standing there, Effie brought the fan up to me, which I was greatly surprised. She made up a story that it wasn't customary for the people to leave a fan to leave any feathers, any fan or any feathers in the casket, that it wasn't done. Well, I knew she wasn't telling the truth. Maybe that's a Ponca belief, but it wasn't a Pawnee belief. And if I hadn't, the inference was if I had just waited, she would have seen that she didn't intend to keep the fan, but that she was going to return it to me. Magnanimous person that she was, I thought. And that the fan was now mine to keep. And she said a few more things, and I just glared at her. That's all I did. I didn't even say anything to her. I took the fan and I walked away. Got back into the. I must say also that Arlene Matthews, who's now off the list as far as our family is concerned, meaning Aunt Viola and myself, I guess, was an aider and abettor of this escapade. And just how she figured into it, I don't know, but she came up to me, and also at the same time, we went back to the funeral home, And then we went back to Aunt Viola's, and in the car going from the funeral home to Aunt Viola's, we had Rosanna Turnbull with us, and we talked about the event and decided that we would bury the fan in the grave anyway. And not tell anyone that we'd done so. We went back to the graveyard after we left. But we did go back to the house. And after we left the house to go to the, it was about 4:30 after we left the house to go to the women's building. The three of us went to the graveyard, but there were still people out there who were filling it in. So we then saw that we couldn't bury the fan, and at that time we returned to the women's building. Got there late because everybody else was seated there, and it was another faux pas, I guess, or mishap, because I was supposed to have been there, and the whole family was waiting and sitting in rows, and including some very close friends. On the one side of the room, on the south side of the room, Garland was buried, I must say, before I go any further, with his head to the north, his head to the west, feet to the east. Okay, in the women's building, there were 4 men seated on the west side of the room, chiefs, men who were taking rolls of chiefs. The guests were seated on the north side of the room. And in the center of the room were spread cloths, and this food was to be placed and served by men who had been selected by Adam, whose seat was on my far right. Next to me sat Sam, and then Aunt Viola, and then on down on the line. Adam, when everyone was seated, Adam I don't remember whether it was Sam that spoke or Adam. I rather suspect that it was Adam who started the thing off, and then Sam may have spoken. Either way, I'll have to check because I'm afraid I cannot remember. They spoke about the purpose of the gathering, and that the family had come and wanted to share this feast with the people, feed the people. And they spoke about the importance of food, sharing food, and that when they ate the food they would have thoughts, pray for the family. A prayer was said. Now, I think this prayer must have been said by Philip Gover, but I can't remember. Philip was one of the 4 men who was sitting over on the west side, and those men were William Taft Eves, the former head chief on the Charlotte Chiefs Council after Garland was Philip, Julius Caesar, the silversmith, was Kitgahaki. Okay, now, who was the other one? I cannot think of the name of the fourth man, but I will put it down. Okay, the four men represented the four bands. After the food was passed around, after the family had been given, this is customary, a drink of water from a bucket, a common ladle, and all members of the family were given a drink of water. The feast consisted of fry bread, meat cooked in a soup, and oranges and bananas that Aunt Viola had purchased, 2 crates of them. And I think there were some other things that people had donated that were out there on the floor in the center. Everyone brought their own dishes and some people brought their own chairs, but others used the chairs that are there, folding chairs. The immediate family was seated on a long wooden bench. And the chiefs were seated on a bench. No, they weren't. I think they were in chairs. It's very bad when you have to try to remember details 3 weeks after an event, over 3 weeks, and when at the time you weren't as perceptive as you would want to be to remember something like this. After the meal was served individually by several men, one of whom was Woodrow Caesar, I believe. After everything had been put away, the dishes put away in paper sacks or bags or whatever the people brought, then here again I can't recall whether Andy got up and said some more words or not, but I know Sam did and told that the family had some gifts that they wished to present to the 2 different individuals, and the speech, this talk followed the usual lines of the gifts, meanwhile, after the dishes were being put away by the guests, the different young men in the family brought the gifts in that we had accumulated. I had brought up from Oklahoma City 1 Pendleton to put over the casket while the body was being viewed. Another Pendleton, this would be taken off of the casket and presented to someone, which was going to be Adam or Sam. Then I brought up another Pendleton, and this was the one that I had given Garland Christmas before last, It was a red one. Red. The other one was maroon background. I brought up several shawls, some pillowcases, sheets. And one of the things that we had to do on Tuesday or Wednesday morning, I believe it was, on Wednesday morning at Aunt Viola's house, early in the morning, we had written out on little slips of paper. We'd cut out little slips of paper and had scotch tape after we'd written the names of the persons each thing was to be given to. These little name tags were taped on the article or the package, so that it would we would know and be able to divide what we had fairly. The gifts were stacked up in fairly random order. There wasn't any precedence to it, except I tried to give away I gave Adam his blanket and Sam his blanket fairly early in the proceedings. Some of these items have been donated by different family members, shawls and Helen Rice, or is it Louise Rice, had come to the house on Wednesday morning and brought a shawl. Hattie had given a shawl. Arling Matthews had put a shawl on the casket. And then there was another blanket and then another blanket over that. I will read the list of shawls that I had that were given out. One was given to the More Mothers group for their help, for their preparing a meal for the family. Another to the Pocahontas Club, who had prepared a meal. Another to the Service Club. The three clubs had prepared meals for the family during the days before. Another was given to Maud Chisholm. Maud Chisholm lives here in Oklahoma City and had often called Garland and talked to him during his illness and had ground some dried corn and meat for him in October that we had gone over and picked up. There was a shawl. Maud wasn't there, so that shawl was saved. The shawl was given to Lucy Pratt, Nora Pratt, I have down here Irene Cleghorn, but I can't recall calling her, but I'm sure I did. Cody Horsechief wasn't there, but a shawl was taken to her. Lois Knife Chief, I don't recall. That's listed here. This was Andy's idea. This Lois Knife Chief. And supposedly a shawl was given to the Wichitas, some of whom were there. Okay, and Nora Pratt was given $10 besides that shawl. Okay. Philip Gover received a pink blanket. This was donated by Viola McIntosh. It had been on the casket, and he was given this at her suggestion. Bed blankets, and these were all purchased by Aunt Viola. These are the nylon type fuzzy blankets that come in a nylon, oh dear, and a plastic bag or seal that said Betty Horse Chief, Pawnee Cowie, some relative to Mose, maybe his brother's wife. Victoria Conklin, Mrs. Calvin Arkakita. Victoria Conklin is the daughter of Hattie. Calvin Arkakita, of course, was Garland's friend in the Indian sense. They'd grown up together, and they each named a son after the other. Calvin was too ill to come. Virginia Moore and Stacy Howell. There were sheets and pillowcases for Bertha Provost, but she wasn't there. She's the Wichita friend. And there was money for Addison. This had to be given to them later because they didn't come. That family wasn't there. So it was given to them a week later when they came up. Bertha came up, brought up by her daughter Berdina, and came to the house to see me. And these gifts were given to them then. Towels were given to Reba Gover, Anna Audrey. Reba's the wife of Philip. Anna Audrey is one that helped cook. Gertie Lewis, Dolly Plumley. And maybe some others. This list isn't absolutely correct because it wasn't updated after we had put, or it wasn't changed after the these were, I'm afraid this is not really an accurate list. But money was given. Dwayne Pratt, of course, was the minister, so I gave him either $20 or $25, I can't recall. Each of these persons, of course, was called up, and the person who did the calling was Jimmy, Garland's son. I asked him to help me with it. He called the names, and I handed out the money, and then we two were standing, and Viola was seated. Viola. Jim Cleghorn, the Nasharo Council, Owen Echohawk. This money was given because of the dance he had sponsored for the Young Dog dance. He had sponsored for Garland on October the 13th in Garland's honor. Alban Leading Fox, $10. I intended to give money to C.D. Moore, but he wasn't there. I intended to give money to Francis Leftland, but I didn't. I gave some money to the Wichitas, and I can't recall who came up to get it. I believe I gave them $25. Jonas Partridge was supposed to, some money was donated by Thelma to give to Jonas Partridge, who was a minister, and Jim Cowie, but I can't recall calling those names. So maybe someone else did it. Actually, Thelma was standing there helping with some of this, so maybe some of these things were given. The Pawnee veterans were given some money, as was the Native American Church. And they were either given $10 or $20. I think it must have been 10, but I can't recall. I had about $200 to give away, which I did. Bay Hammond, these are the names I had listed, but here again, Bessie Horsechief, Philip Jim, Delbert Horsechief, Bay Hammond, Addison Thompson. Well, he wasn't given his money then. It was later. somewhere there's a little piece of paper that I had in my wallet, which I will check and look for, and that will be the more accurate list. I also have here a list of the people that gave us money, gave me money. Anna Audra gave 10, Hattie Tonemaw gave 25, the Native American Church gave 10, Dina Littleson gave 10, and the veterans gave a check for 25, which they gave to me later on November 12th at the time of the Veterans Dance. Mamie Taylor gave 10, Arthur Fields gave 10, Arlene Matthews gave, Albin gave me $3. Now, some of this money was given at the time of the church, the prayer meeting. Before, on Wednesday night, some of this money was given to me. Alex Matthews gave a check for $50, and Rosanna Turnbull a check for $100, and Wanda Canuho a check for $10. She's the daughter of Lawrence Goodfox, who was Chowee chief. I believe this is a complete list, but there may be more. This is a continuation of the other side of this tape, discussing the funeral feast, November the 1st, 1979, Garland Blaine family. There was quite a bit of material that Aunt Viola had accumulated, other people had given her to give away, and this was passed out. I didn't do this, but I think it was maybe some of Thelma's grandchildren, Aunt Viola's grandchildren, Thelma's children, that did this. And I took some, I had some money, and I just, that I wanted to give to different people, and I went over and gave Nora some money, and she indicated to me that 2 other women there had helped cook. 2, one was Anna Audra, and the other was, oh my goodness, I think it was Ruth Pratt, Andy Pratt's wife, I think. Now, I'm not sure. This is hard for me because I'm not sure, but she was over there, and I think she may have, and if not, it was someone else. It was the younger woman. Who was that? Maybe it was Nora's daughter. I'm not sure. I didn't know her. Anyway, I gave each of them some money, and I don't remember how much. I think it was $10 apiece. And then I found some other people in the audience that I had noticed were there, and I gave them money, and then I went back to where I'd been seated. And then after that, either before that or after that, this is, again, I'm not sure, but I think it might have been after we ate and before the giveaway. The four men representing the chiefs got up and talked. Each one talking in Pawnee, which made me very, very happy, because this is the way Garland would have done it if he had been there and doing it for someone else. The language was used, and each man spoke maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and the one that translated what he said was Julius Caesar, and he had given a very moving tribute to Garland at of the Young Dog Dance, and he spoke again today, and he came out and told the family, translated what he had said, because he realized that a lot of those people did not understand the language, particularly those people there that were the Ponca side of his children's relatives, Garland's children's relatives, who were there, who were Ponca or Oto. So he said, all of them said good things about Garland and his life, and how he had been a good leader and a good man. And then after all this was over with, Adam got up and made the statement that now the family wanted the people to know that they could go on with their normal lives. This was to usually there's a mourning period of some, used to be in the old days, of some time where the village would not have any dances or ceremonies of certain types, and this was now a very shortened form that people could resume their normal lives, which meant they could do what they would normally be doing and not continue the mourning. This was for the people, not for the families as much, although he did say that to the words to the effect that life goes on, and it would be hard for a while, but afterward, with God's help, that things would become easier, and we should all pray and to God for help during this time of bereavement. When he had finished his remarks, which he made in the center of the room, then he said that the feast was over, and the people should come. And he didn't tell the people. Maybe he did. If you want, maybe he said, if you would like to come and shake the hands of the family, you can, or maybe this is just assumed and is done anyway. But a great many people filed by and shook our hands, and all of them said very kind things, and they were from the heart. They weren't ritualized statements. They were sincere feelings. Some people were crying, some weren't. Most of them were not, though. Because by this time, of course, the shock had worn off, and most people were able to contain their feelings. Another person that I gave something to was Dolly Plumley, to interject this. She was a good friend, relative of Garland's on the Skeety, I believe it's the Skeety side. There were, I imagine, altogether there must have been 100 people there, not counting the relatives. And there were, Jim Cleghorn sat over with the family. There's a relationship way back. He's Oto, but there's a relationship to the Pawnee somewhere, so he was related. The number of relatives or people on that side must have been 30, 35. Large number of them. I didn't know they're from the Ponca people. My son sat over with us. Rosanna Turnbull. Then when it was all over, we took our things back to the car and went back to Auntie's house. I gathered up my closed because I'd stayed there at night on Wednesday night, and Michael and I got in the two cars. He'd driven a Garland's Datsun from the city in order to get there, and we took the van and we went out to the north graveyard, north cemetery, and it was dark now, and Michael dug with his hands into the soft dirt that had been heaped up on top of the grave. He made a deep hole so that no animal could dig the fan out. And we put the fan in the relative position it would have been if it's still been in the casket. We covered it up. We stayed there a few minutes, and then we left for Oklahoma City. This is Martha Blaine. I'm recording on December the 27th, 1979, an account of the Christmas dance held by the Pawnee tribe at Pawnee, Oklahoma, in the Woman's Building on Christmas Day. This is a traditional affair that has been held for many years on Christmas Day, regardless of what day of the week this is. This year, Christmas was on Tuesday. It was a very warm, for December day, but there were not as many people there as I have seen in times past. In fact, I would say 10 years ago, there would have been twice as many people. The Women's Building would have been packed from wall to wall, from end to end with people, with a great many dancers and so forth. This year, perhaps because there was no notice put in the Pawnee paper the week before that it was being held, visiting tribes were not as well represented. The Wichitas were not. There were no Wichitas there at all. There may have been a dance. The Wichitas themselves may have held a dance, or something else may have been happening down at Anadarko. But it is very unusual for there not to be any Wichitas at such a traditional dance. There were the dance is organized by the veterans. They're the ones that sponsor it. And the Veterans Committee this year consists of John Knife Chief, Lynn Rice, Eleanor Fields, and Rusopa Pam. They were the ones who were sitting behind the table that is customarily kept for them behind the two flags of the United States and the Pawnee tribal flag. There was one big difference that I noticed this year, that there were no seats for the chiefs. Usually at any dance of importance in the past, there have been places for the four band chiefs to sit. There were no chiefs represented at all. There weren't even chairs put there for them this year. In the beginning, John Knife Chief opened the ceremonies in a very informal sort of way. Rather, he was the only one sitting at the table when he was telling people that in a certain length of time, which would be very long, that we would all be eating. And he called out the order that the tribe would eat in by how they they would line up, and the singers are to be first, and then I believe the next was visiting tribes, and then after that, a new wrinkle, he called out the bands. The bands would eat in order, with the skidies last. This I haven't seen done before. Anyway, not recently. We arrived about, I don't know, I arrived with the Cowies, the Thelma and Mose, and some of their children and grandchildren. And we arrived early. There were very few people there, perhaps about 11:30 or so. Then we actually, I don't think that the meal was served until almost 1, sometime between 12:30 and 1. I'm not just sure when, but it was seemed like a long time. The meal was cooked in the kitchen of the women's building, and one of the cooks was Wanda Canulo, another was Lois Knife Chief, and I don't know who the rest of the cooks were this time. The meal was served, and we went out the front door of the building, in through the kitchen, the door that opens onto the sidewalk, and into the kitchen. They had 2 tables set up in there, and there was the food on the tables, and the different women who he called out their names before the meal began and asked them to go and help serve. And this was done, and the menu was soup with corn cooked in it, meat, boiled meat, fry bread, orange or a banana, a variety of desserts, pies, pumpkin pie, different kinds of cakes, chocolate cake, and some cupcakes, and some sweet rolls, and some bags of candy that had been made up, and coffee to drink, and maybe tea, but I'm not sure. Iced tea often appears during any time of the year. One noticeable thing, that no matter how many people, Indian people, are in a room, it's never very noisy. When they're sitting waiting there at Pawnee for eating, people talk, but you don't hear the uproar you hear among other groups. It's always quiet when they're standing in line to eat. People talking, but they don't get loud. I noticed that very much this time, how quietly everyone conducted themselves. People carried their food back to their chairs, which they had brought themselves, if they were not using some of the metal folding chairs that are already in the building. The people I could see from where I was sitting on the south side were mostly South Band members, which I was interested in noticing that this time. There were some Otos. Some visiting tribes seemed to go on the south side, too. Some Ponkas and Otos. But there was a Skidees there. There were some Skidees on the south side. The Album Meeting Fox and his wife and a daughter. And the Fields girls always sit over against the wall on the west side. Then the Cowies and Viola Blaine McIntosh sat next to me. Then across the aisle from us was Hattie Tonema and her family. Her 2 daughters were there, Lamar and Florine, and their husbands. Then Eula Eshelman and her sister Pauline Murray were there. And And in front of us was sitting the Eves family, Rachel and her daughter and some grandchildren. In front of them were the Good Foxes, Lawrence and Mary, and some of their children and some grandchildren. On the far side, there was Mamie Echohawk and Ivy Peters and Mary Botone and the Osborns, Effie and Ramona and Minnie, who is now Fields, I believe. Anyway, people were not distributed strictly by bands, but there's a tendency for the north side to have more skidees. Sitting on it is a traditional thing. Then, after the dinner was served, people put up their dishes and began to get ready to dance for the dance. The men dressing in the kitchen area after that had been cleaned out. Women had dressed were to dress in the bathroom at the other end of the building. The singers gathered around the drum. There was probably 14 singers this time. Conspicuous by their absence were the Pratts, Adam and Andy. But Philip Jim was there, and Philip Matthews, and Robert Rice, and of course John Knifechief, and some of the Moors who had been added to the group. And others also. I think maybe Philip Gover was also singing. Right near the beginning, they had after they started the music, the Pawnee flag song. Oh, there was a prayer before the meal. Dwayne Pratt gave a prayer, and a little talk besides the prayer, talking about the spirit of Christmas and other such Christian things. Nothing said about traditional ways at all. The flag song came, and then everyone was asked to stand. Then the round dance, which lasts about 15-20 minutes. And I'd say there was probably maybe as many as 20 women dancing, maybe a few more. In one circle only around the singers. After the round dance was over, I don't think any of the men had yet come in. Well, they finally did, and they were dressed in a straight. I think there was one fancy dancer there, but there were only about at the most 10 dancers this time, which here again, like the Veterans Day, you see a decreasing number of individuals who are getting dressed and dancing. This is quite a contrast to the first dances that I saw at Pawnee in the winters in 1962. I remember my first dance, it seemed that there were was in the same building, but there must have been 30, 35 dancers. All the men seemed to be dancing in those days, from those in their 20s all the way up through their 70s. Now the distribution seems to be around the 50s, 60s, with only a few younger ones dancing. Nathaniel Wilson was dancing. He was one of the Pawnees. There were some there that weren't Pawnees. Abe Conklin, who was married to Hattie Tonomo's daughter, Victoria, was dancing. Then there was another Osage dancing. There were only 2 dancers sitting on the south side. Abe was one, and I don't recall who the other one was. Most of them were sitting over on the other side. Jimmy Garrett was there. He was dancing. Of course, he's not a Pawnee. During the time of the dancing, those war dances, people were getting up and they were either dancing around with a present in their hands, because this is the time when the Pawnees distribute presents to one another in the tribe. And all during the period before the round dance, or even during it, people were bringing in baskets and stacks of presents that they wanted to distribute to their friends. Aunt Viola had a plastic clothes basket full of presents, plus 3 or 4 blankets that she had brought in, and they were placed down beside her chair. The gift giving, most people had something to give away, and they would move around and take a few things and then walk around and distribute them. The women wore their shawls usually when they were doing this. At least it seemed that way to me. I did. I did not have any gifts wrapped, but I had gotten money because I wanted to maintain the practice that Garland and I had always had of distributing money rather than gifts. So I gave $10 to Hattie Tonomo. I gave money to Pauline Murray and Eula Eshelman and Catherine Bowtown and Mamie Echohawk, and to Charlie Lone Chief to give to Buddy, his son, Lone Chief, and Gertie Lewis, and maybe others that I have forgotten. This is done by folding the money and putting it in their hands and shaking their hands, wishing them Merry Christmas, or saying anything else that seems appropriate. I had to leave early because I left at 3:30. I did not dance other than there was a special that Frank Davis called for John Wayne Jake in memory of John Wayne Jake. And since Andy got up and started to dance, I felt that it was appropriate that I do so also. And so we did that in memory of John Wayne Jake. But other than that, I didn't. And Archie Suneagle, who sat behind us with his family, told Aunt Viola that he wasn't going to dance for a year because of the death of his mother, Genevieve Suneagle. So there is a stricture on dancing too soon after the death of a person in your family. I do not know how long I will wait, but apparently it should be a greater time than 2 months, although Aunt Viola seemed to feel it was all right to dance. But then I'm not in the same position as she is. As far as the MC, the Master of Ceremonies, and the way the group was led, it seemed to be very informal and didn't seem to have any of the dignity and more formal way of handling it. It was just a little bit on the sloppy side. Knife Chief, I wasn't too impressed by the way he introduced or talked or did anything. And Lynn Rice has never been a Master of Ceremonies, but he can do fairly well. But it still isn't like hearing Bat or Garland or Sam Osborne or some of the older people who knew what they were doing and did a very fine job.